Darkcast Network. Out of the shadows comes the best of indie podcasts.
You are listening to Castles and Cryptids, where the castles are haunted and the cryptids are cryptic as fuck. And I'm Alana.
I'm Kelsey.
And tonight we are on episode 117.
Yeah, we are.
Yes! I got it! And tonight we're talking about near-death experiences. Tonight, this morning, whatever time it is, wherever you are.
Yeah.
It may or may not be Friday night, wherever we are right now at this point in time. After a very long week. So I'm very happy to be recording with you.
We just released our latest episode this morning that was filled with so many Gordo interruptions. It was insane to edit. I left a lot of it in, but well, I wouldn't say a lot. I probably left 75% of it in. Yeah.
Sometimes he's kind of cute, and sometimes it's kind of funny to listen to you be harassed by him, I must admit. I find it entertaining.
I think the episode that just came out was the most Gordo we've ever had. It was a whole lot. So,
wow.
Yeah, we'll see how this episode goes. Hopefully it goes better. Because that was infuriating. It was so annoying. Kept trying to
I did tell you I was
down.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're like trying to do anything with cats around. I did probably tell you on air. I can't remember, but I was just like, got back from my mom's house. No cats here. Oh gosh, I can put down a cup again or something, and nobody's gonna like throw it off the counter. Yeah. They're crazy.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. I called it his shenanigans. There was a whole lot of shenanigans going on.
Shenanigans. Well, I have an animal fun fact that I'm going to steal from a podcast I was listening to earlier today. Because it was the Office ladies. Don't worry, they're big enough.
Fun. Okay, what is it?
Yeah. You know, the Office, the gals. Okay, I think they were talking about some may or may not be false facts that Dwight, you know, his character was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of them that was posited as a true fact was that, like, true or true like, oh yeah, she was quizzing the other one, like, true or false, flamingos have the longest orgasm in the animal kingdom at like 30 minutes or something like that, I think.
Oh, I think I've heard that before.
I think that was like the question posed to whoever was answering, Angela maybe. And then it's like, wait, I don't know, that sounds interesting, but it's like, no, false fact. Because with flamingos, I'll probably have to double check this so I don't, you know, misquote me, but I think flamingos, they said, topped out at 15 minutes, whereas pigs were actually the ones who had the longest orgasm that could be up to like half an hour or more.
Shit.
And I did not fact check that because I was like literally listening to it, and then I was like in the bathroom, and then I was like, wait, I'm gonna go back to my desk and like try to remember this.
Yeah.
So I'll double check, but I think it's true.
That's crazy. Oh my god.
If I heard it on a podcast, clearly
it has to be true.
Not a false fact. It was, well, they were verifying Dwight's false facts versus so
nice.
Yeah. But yes, it's not good to rely on my memory, but I was like, that's interesting. Also reminds me of that moment where Phyllis is like, I didn't have an orgasm till I was like 42. And then it lasted for 2 years. 43 was a blur, or whatever she says in her cute little accent.
I do not remember her saying that, but
Oh,
it
it's a
sounds like
really
something
good
Phyllis would
Phyllis
say.
line. This is all your fault. You made me watch The Office. Now I will quote it at you forever.
Yeah, him and that, is he the fridge salesman, right? That's her husband.
Oh, Bob Vance of Vance
Yeah.
Refrigeration?
Yeah.
I'm
I was
sure
like,
they
all I
sell
know
all
is
sorts of appliances that
all I know
refrigerate.
is something about fridges. How I remember him.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, and then the after the merger. Oh God, now this is an office tangent. No, but if once the new kid comes to town, played by Rashida Jones,
Oh
Karen,
yeah.
and she's like, "Who's Bob Vance?" And she's like, "Oh, honey, you've got a lot to learn about this town." Anyway, anywho, what are we talking about today? If I can keep us on track.
Well, we already said it's near-death experiences.
Oh, did
I couldn't
we?
remember if we were doing like, because typically when you look up near-death experiences, it's like people that saw heaven and like came back, like that kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
yeah,
I couldn't remember
yeah.
if that's what we talked about. So I did more like brushes with death, like crazy survival stories, uh, than like people that
Ooh,
saw heaven and
okay.
like came back to life. Yeah, so I have some crazy survival stories. Uh
Interesting. Like just more in the true sense of the word, or
yeah.
like the term. That's funny. Yeah, we didn't really specifically talk. These are one of those ones where it's kind of hard to divvy up sometimes because you're like,
Yeah.
well, we'll cover some of the same stories, but then you like, if you go look on the internet, there's probably just a bunch of the same stories, like
Yeah,
in the top
because
three
when I
Google picks or
first
whatever.
was looking it up, like near death experiences, it was just a lot of like people that saw heaven then kind of like came back to life or were resuscitated or things like that. But I knew at
Yeah.
some point we had talked about doing like the kind of I shouldn't be alive type or like I survived type stories. And
Oh
then I couldn't remember
yeah.
if that's the direction we were taking with this episode. So I just decided to stick with that.
Okay,
Because
cool.
I
Okay,
found
cool.
some
That's
crazy
interesting.
ones.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's shows like I Survived and whatnot, and
Yeah, one of
yeah,
mine, I guess, had
love
like
those.
was covered on I think I Survived or yeah, I think it
Ooh.
was on I Survived. They apparently did talk about it. Um
Okay, that's
yeah.
funny. Yeah, I kind of went in a little bit of a little bit less of the traditional direction because a lot of them are in the traditional direction, like you said, just um that you see the same form of the same thing or whatever,
Yeah.
like a bright light and whatnot. And I really, it is really interesting when they do differ. So don't worry, I think I'll have some to satisfy both of
Okay,
people's
cool.
curiosities.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, yeah, I have some crazy things. I did end up putting I have a few
Ooh.
pictures in the drive. Because I
Oh, I
have
can always
three.
count on you.
Yeah, I was able to find pictures, not too many. Uh, but yeah, I have
Well,
three kind of stories of these like crazy survival things, and we've been very like nautical lately because all of mine have to do with boats. Uh,
oh really? Just like
yeah,
incidentally?
yeah, which kind of
Okay.
ended up being crazy. Just out of the lists I read of stories like of crazy survival, these kind of caught my attention the most. And then yeah, they all just happened to be about boats, and I didn't realize that until I was completely done typing up my notes. And then I was like, oh, all of these are about boats. We've been talking about the sea and boats and everything a lot lately. So
Oh my God, we're gonna have to
yeah.
start a little jingle like because I listen to a podcast called Drinking the Kool-Aid, and they'll often do a little joke where they talk about aliens, where they'll go like, it always comes back to aliens. And so
Yeah.
if we just keep going on like different maritime ocean mysteries, we're gonna have to start going, it always comes back to The maritime. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
The ocean. No, but something, because, yeah, so many things are sinister about the deep waters.
Yeah. So my first one is the story of Jose Salvador Alvarenga, and
Ooh.
he is from El Salvador. He's a fisherman who ended up being able to survive 13 months adrift at
Oh
sea.
my god.
Yeah, it's
Those
crazy.
stories are insane. 13
Mm-hmm.
months?
13 months, so over a year.
Yeah, like, even
Yeah.
when they go on that show Alone, and they're in the, like,
Oh,
usually the Canadian wilderness for, like, at least 2 months before everyone cops out and taps out and
yeah.
whatnot.
Oh,
But, like,
wow.
that's over a year.
Yeah, this is a pretty crazy one. So
Okay.
it started when on November 17th, 2012, he had set off to go on a professional fishing trip with this younger fisherman named Ezekiel Cordoba. And he went with this, like with Cordoba, because his usual fishing mate that he typically went out with wasn't able to join him. And he and Cordoba had actually never even worked together or anything before. So this was like their first trip out.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, the pair left from a fishing village on the Pacific coast of Mexico. And the plan was to be out on the water for about 30 hours, so a little over a day. And
Okay.
they had plans to do this deep sea fishing for sharks, marlin, and sailfish, which I can't remember what sailfish are.
Oh.
I've heard of them before. I don't particularly know what they look like, but
Right, and marlin makes me think of Finding Nemo, but I don't know if that's because what those is that what those fish. No, they're called
no, they're called
clownfish.
clownfish. His name is just
But
Marlin.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was like, there's a
Yeah,
name. Someone's name is Marlin. Maybe the dad. Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So their boat was like a 7 meter, 23 foot, like topless, like so it didn't have any like canopy,
Ooh.
nothing. Like it was a fiberglass skiff that had a single outboard motor and then had a refrigerator sized ice box that they would store the fish that were caught. So like
Okay.
not intended to, it's not like what was that show, like Deadliest Catch, where they're like on this huge
I was
like
just thinking
fucking
of
ship.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Claude had it on when I was back home visiting mom in New Brunswick.
Mm.
I was like,
Yeah, it's not
oh.
Deadliest Catch crazy like ness going on there. They have basically a refrigerator size cooler, and once it's full, like that's kind of it.
Let's see which other
So,
History Channel shows we can mention or whatever.
right?
Deadliest Cat, yeah.
A few hours into their trip, actually, this pretty severe storm started, and it ended up lasting for like 5 days. And it pushed them pretty far off of course from where they were supposed to be. And
Oh.
yeah, so not good already. And the pair, by this point, like, I'm not sure if it was before, like, in between they left and when the storm started, or if maybe they were doing some of the fishing during the storm, which I can't really see happening. But it did say that the pair, by the end of the storm, had caught about 500 kilograms or 1,100 pounds of fresh fish. And uh,
Damn.
yeah, because of the force of the storm, they actually were forced to dump it overboard in order to make the boat easier to steer during the storm to like get rid of
Oh
the
my
added weight.
god.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess you would assume that because they do seem to catch things under very, like,
yeah,
bad conditions on that show.
yeah,
Terrible. So you're like, okay, well, maybe they were fishing during the storm a bit, but yeah, obviously you've miscalculated if you're fishing and then you're in a storm where you have to, like, then get rid of so
yeah,
much of your catch. Like, oh, what a bad, bad day
yeah.
for them.
So after this, like Alvarenga, he was able to call for help on their two-way radio that they had. After the call for help, though, the battery ended up dying, and also most of the boat's electronics had been damaged by the storm, along with the boat's motor. So they couldn't
Ooh,
drive anywhere, and they couldn't like navigate, and now they couldn't radio for any more help after the first call.
dang.
Uh, so they were left with no sails, oars, anchor, and no running lights at all. So they're basically just like listlessly like floating. Like oh, there was like nothing that they could do.
Yeah, yeah. She's so mad she had to beat the place. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so wait, they had sails normally and a motor, but like none of this is working now.
I
Is
don't
that
know if they
right?
typically had sails. They typically had a motor. The
Oh,
motor isn't working. Uh,
okay, okay, sorry.
yeah. So, with no other way to contact the shore, the boat was simply just drifting in the open ocean, and most of their
Ooh,
fishing gear had also been lost or damaged in the storm, leaving them with only a handful of basic supplies and very little food left.
that's a problem.
Yeah. So, a search party, after they received, I think, like the radio call from them, was sent out to look for the boat along with the two men. And they did search for 2 days, but it ended up being called off because there was poor visibility and they didn't successfully find them. So, their boss
Hmm.
basically gave up and assumed that the two men had drowned during the storm. Like,
Yeah.
maybe it had been tipped over and like the boat sunk or something.
Sure, and it's
And
hard to
with
search, as we know, in
yeah,
the
yeah,
ocean.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
with them not being found, the men were now alone at sea with no extra food or any sort of supplies really. It said that they scavenged for food when possible. They were able to catch fish, turtles, jellyfish, and seabirds with their bare hands because they didn't really have like fishing equipment, I guess,
Wow.
anymore.
That
Yeah,
sounds a little familiar. Cause like I'm like, oh my god, what a harrowing sea tale. Like,
yeah.
not everybody can do that. Just
No,
learn that's like learning to spear a fish or something. Like,
right? Yeah,
yeah, anyone can, and not even then is it easy to take a fish and a pole and a bait and a lure
yeah,
and catch a fish. Like you have to be so patient, but to actually like I don't know, just grasp one or whatever, just catch one out of
yeah.
the air or spear one. Oh my god, I watched this show with Chris Hemsworth the other day on the oh, I don't know if it was Discovery or Nat Geo because I was on Disney Plus, one of those things looking for stuff.
Hmm.
Um yeah, he does a bunch of challenges and one of the ones was where he was like, I'm not gonna eat for 4 days and then just to experience kind of like more like a tribe that they go without eating unless they can hunt something that they were
Yeah.
um talking to and stuff, and then he had to like he was so hungry and just so like just like I don't know, he just like a shell
Yeah.
of his former self, but then he had to do this thing where he had to like go underwater and just try to spear a fish and to like eat it to break the fast. He's like, after 4 days you'll be like, you'll feel so good when you eat it, and he's just like, I don't know, man, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. And then like he just gets that one last
Yeah.
like yeah, breath or whatever. Yeah, sorry, spoilers, but no. And then he just like is finally able to like spear a fish and then he gets to cook it and eat it. He's just like the happiest.
Wow.
Little
Yeah.
Thor on Earth. Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
uh so it said that they also somehow were able to collect food along with plastic that was floating in the water, so they might have used like the plastic to catch rainwater that they were able to drink because obviously like they couldn't drink the seawater. It was a little
Yeah.
confusing. It didn't really explain it very well. And
Okay.
they had tried to stick with drinking the rainwater, but it said were often forced to drink turtle blood or their own urine, like just to stay alive. I've never heard of somebody
Wow.
drinking turtle blood before. I don't know. Everything said they drank turtle
True.
blood. I don't know if that's like, I don't know, maybe it was out of all the things they were able to catch, it had the most like blood, because I can't picture like fish really having much blood or birds.
No, and
So
I mean, it's
yeah,
not as if they're gonna have it on tap. Either
yeah,
way, they're gonna
yeah.
eat
It
an
was a little
animal. Like,
weird.
yeah, maybe you're gonna ingest some of their blood for sustenance. Also, like you're just doing
Yeah.
it, yeah, for sustenance and yeah, to survive.
Uh, so according to Alvarenga, Cordoba had kind of, it got really sad. So he had lost all hope about 4 months in and started
About
becoming
four
like,
months in, more like 4 days
yeah,
in. Sorry, I'm just kidding. Like I would though. That's crazy.
yeah, he became really sick from the raw food diet because like they're on a boat, they can't cook any of this food. And he
Yeah.
actually eventually died from starvation after he started to refuse to eat anything. And Alvarenga
Oh,
says that he himself thought about killing himself for like 4 days after Cordoba died, but like he had a really strong like faith, and it said that that stopped him. Was like his religion and everything. He didn't go through with it.
damn.
Yeah,
Yeah, something's got to keep you going at that point because
yeah, it'd be a lot.
your will to live would be tested. Let's just say,
Yeah.
I'm sure. Damn.
He said that Cordoba had made him promise to not eat his body after he died, and he kept, so like he
Aw.
kept his promise, like as far as we know. He says that he kept Cordoba's body on the boat for at least the first few days, because he says that he ends up like talking to the body, like because he's by himself.
Yeah.
So he spends the next few days talking to Cordoba's body, and eventually ended up throwing his body overboard after the sixth day because he feared that he was like actually going insane, like talking to him. So yeah, he dumped his body overboard, which I think really upset Cordoba's family. Um, but I mean,
Aw. That's that's
yeah,
hard though,
but like the
cuz
boat, as far as I can tell,
he
I couldn't
was
find
trying to
pictures of the boat,
survive.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
What?
I couldn't find pictures of the boat, so I don't know how big it is, but like obviously
I
if he
mean,
was on the boat for like another 9 months with a dead body that's like decaying in the sun, that would be pretty rank. So
yeah, and that would be a
yeah.
dis I'm sure that would be a disservice to his spirit also, you would think.
Yeah.
Like, just to have him sitting there. This sounds
Yeah.
very familiar, I must say. Like, I feel like I may have heard about this one like once or something. It's just
Yeah, I
horrific,
think
though.
this is the one that like I'm pretty sure was on like I Survived or I Shouldn't Be Alive or
Oh,
something.
okay. Yeah, I think I came across something like that. I was looking for Good Omens because I wanted to make sure I watched that.
Mm.
And
The
also we'll
new
tangent about
season.
it.
Oh, Neil
Okay, well,
Neil Gaiman
I'll
just owns my heart. He's so ridiculous. He just made the second season so gay and it was so unnecessary.
gay man. I can't believe
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't
just so
tangent to
funny.
you before the show though, because we were literally just watching some the other show you told us to watch, Dark, before I came up to
Mm,
record, but I knew we were already getting late, so I didn't I didn't have time to bring it up and yammer at you yet. But I can see
yeah,
why you told us to watch it.
it's so good.
It's pretty
It's sit
crazy.
there. I have to
Was
rewatch it because I watched the seasons as they aired, so I watched each season about a year apart from each other. So,
Oh, is there multiple of this one already?
of
Season? Okay.
Dark,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, Dark has 3 seasons. It's like over now.
Okay. Okay, good. Good. I'm
Yeah.
glad to
So
hear.
I have to rewatch like start to finish to feel like I get the whole like storyline of what they were trying to do, cuz it's a
Okay.
lot.
It's a
It gets a
lot. There's a
lot.
lot of characters. I was confused about whose kids were everyone's, but I
Yeah.
did recognize that the one actor was also the same guy from that 1899 show. I was like, I just got done watching that. Is that not that dude?
Yeah, the
um,
ship captain
he's in it,
he's in
yeah.
it. He's the
Yeah.
stranger.
That's right.
I think
Which
his character name is.
that's what IMDb or whatever called him. Yes, the stranger.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, I don't know anyone's name.
Yeah.
Anywho, I digress.
Yeah.
I'll cut out my yammering, perhaps.
um
TV
yeah.
tangent. Oh my god, we should have a sting. Well, a soundbite or whatever that's what they was called on The Office. A sting. TV tangent.
Yeah,
Angela's
you'll have to let me
digital
know
clutter.
when you
Sorry.
start getting really into the show. Like when you're
Mm.
like past the first season, you're just going to be like, what the fuck am I watching? Like I sat there every
Oh,
episode with like
already.
the entire family tree map of who was related to who and whose was everybody's kids and the different pictures of the different like ages of all the
Oh
characters because I
no.
couldn't keep it straight. And I was like, fuck, I had it saved as a bookmark on my computer for 3 fucking years trying to follow the show. Like, yeah, it's a lot.
What?
It gets so much more complicated, you know, you know.
Oh
Anyway, yeah.
no. Okay, sorry.
Okay. So yeah, Cordoba, he is gone, so Alvarenga is now left alone on the ship. He
Right.
basically has no option but to continue this raw food and rainwater
Yeah.
diet for like another 9 months.
Yeah, that or what? Kill yourself? But how even? Like,
Yeah,
it's just as awful of a prospect. Ugh.
yeah. He later says that he saw multiple transoceanic container ships like traveling past, but he was never successfully able to get any of their attention,
Wow.
which just breaks my heart. I don't know
Yeah.
how many of them like passed by, but he did say he was able to track the time that was passing by like paying attention to the phases of the moon. So like he was aware of like how long was passing. He didn't lose track of time.
Holy
Um
shit. Like, that
yeah,
would be difficult, especially without something
right?
to mark the days. You'd be like, well, did I just count? Was it 30 days? Was it 38 days? Like, you would literally think you were going insane. I don't know. Sounds like my
Yeah.
worst nightmare.
Uh so eventually he was able to spot this small island and he made the like pretty crazy decision to end up abandoning the boat and swim to this tile islet that was part of Ebon Atoll. Like I think that's an
Wow.
island. Uh so he like swam there, got to shore, and it said that a couple found him on January 30th, 2014. By this point he was like he Alvarenga's in like his late 30s and he was found by two locals, Emi Libocamito and Russell Leakedrick.
John
And
Smith. No, I'm just kidding.
they ended up finding him. They said he was naked, clutching a knife and shouting in Spanish. Uh,
Wow. Just washed up on
yeah.
shore. Oh.
Yeah. Like I think they probably found him wandering around. Um and
Right,
he
because he
was
wanted to, yeah, he
yeah.
booked it for the island. He left the ship he
Yeah, he
was
just
clinging
leaves the
to.
boat and
Right,
just
because
like swims
it was
there.
more like a raft at this, like, it wasn't, it's not like it's a
No,
working
it's a
boat.
boat.
Right, but
Well,
that it was dead in the water, wasn't it? Yeah, this
yeah,
was, okay,
but
sorry.
it's
But
still
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's not sinking. It's not in any danger of sinking or anything like that, but
Right.
yeah.
Like your last
Um
boat. No.
yeah, no, not like that.
Yeah, but it's not safe to
So,
stay on. He can't stay on it forever regardless. So yeah, he had to
yeah,
make
cuz they just weren't
that
finding
crazy.
him.
Yeah, that was brave. Like, that's, you got to make
Yeah.
that decision to, like, okay, I'm going to try and stay alive. Wow.
Yeah. So he ended up being treated in hospital for like 11 days. The doctor said that his vital signs were pretty good, but his blood pressure was unusually low. And they also said that
Okay.
his ankles were really swollen and he struggled with walking. And I
Gee.
think that's
Wow.
probably because he just spent so much of your time sitting. Um, yeah.
Like literal sea legs. Not even once from just
Yeah,
being on a boat, but from being
probably.
on a little like raft dinghy boat.
Um, so after receiving treatment, he was flown home to El Salvador to reunite with his family. And they actually hadn't even been in touch for like 8 years leading up to his disappearance. And
What?
yeah, I don't really know what was going on with that, but it said that his family feared he had actually been dead before he had even went missing, like just because they hadn't heard from him in so long, they thought maybe he was already dead.
Oh,
But when like he
oh,
was found, and then they're like, "We're gonna reunite you with your family," they're like, "Okay," kind of thing. So when they heard that he was
oh.
alive and like what he had gone through, they were really happy to hear that he had been found, and his daughter ended up saying, quote, "The first thing I'll do is hug him and kiss him." So like I don't even think he really saw his daughter.
Oh my
um
goodness.
yeah, again, it didn't really talk about why that was, so I don't really know, but
That reads like a
um
TV show where
yeah,
there's some
kind of,
complicated
yeah,
reason why they're it's
yeah,
like every
right,
I don't know, horror movie, I feel like sometimes they're like, "We lost a child." There's always something they're like
yeah,
dealing with, you know. You're like, "Oh,
yeah,
but that's
uh
dang. Talk about
mhm.
rough and like you're like, okay, well, now we're supposed to maybe we should feel like we have to make up and be
Yeah,
closer because
I
you've been
think
on this
so,
harrowing journey, but they
yeah,
were kind of estranged, it sounds like. So, I mean, yeah, it's a
yeah.
little awkward.
So,
Weird.
yeah, the story was like heavily reported worldwide when it first happened. And there was a bunch of initial criticism from all these skeptics. I won't really get
Oh,
into it, but there was stuff saying like, um, just weird stuff about like you couldn't survive on that, and you didn't actually drift that far, and the storm like wouldn't have put you there, and the water currents wouldn't have taken you this where, and like all this
what?
shit. Yeah, it was a bunch of bullshit. But they figured it out basically based on like the logs of like when they left. Like obviously their employer knew the name of the like Cordoba and him
Yeah.
had left on this day, and like they went missing and like all that shit. So
I mean, yeah, what kind of
yeah,
receipts do they want? Like a freaking video
yeah,
montage of the whole thing? Like, that's just not gonna happen.
yeah.
Sorry, dude. You can believe it or
Um,
not.
yeah.
Ripley's,
So after
believe it or not.
all that kind of shit that happened, they did say that
Yeah.
Jose Salvador Alvarenga is the first person in recorded history to have survived in a small boat at sea for more than a year, which is pretty crazy.
Hopefully first and
Yeah.
last.
Yeah.
I mean,
It
alone?
said,
You said, or well, I
well,
guess he was.
he was alone for the last 9 months.
True, true, true,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Either way, horrific and
Yeah.
torturous.
It says
I
that he
don't.
survived a total of 438 days at sea and is estimated to have covered between 5,500 and 6,700 miles, just like drifting
Wow.
around. Yeah. I think between
Ugh.
drifting around and like him swimming to the island, like start to finish, I think.
Yeah.
My last little thing I
Lord.
found was really the newest update I could find, really. It was from Wikipedia. I found a lot of stuff actually on Wikipedia for my things, some good quotes and stuff. This one was just that in 2015, Alvarenga gave a series of interviews about his ordeal to a journalist named Jonathan Franklin, who ended up publishing his story as a book called 438 Days, An Extraordinary True Story of Survival at Sea. And shortly after the release of the book, the family of Ezekiel Cordoba ended up suing Alvarenga for like $1 million, and they
What?
accused him of cannibalizing their relative in order to survive,
Oh
despite the pact that
no.
Cordoba would not be eaten after he died. But Alvarenga, it just the last thing I found was that Alvarenga's lawyer denied like any cannibalism accusations. Um,
That
yeah.
sucks. I mean, hard for that family, but I don't
Yeah.
know. It feels like you're just going after the guy who
Yeah.
last saw him alive, but they were trying to survive together. It's not like he killed him on
Yeah.
purpose. It's not like
Yeah,
he
they
didn't
were
eat
trying to
him. He didn't
survive.
do any of that.
Yeah, as far as we know, they could have both theoretically survived together, but it did sound like Cordoba was getting like ill from the diet that they were eating. So, yeah.
Yeah, sure, it could
Um,
happen. That's not a healthy, seriously balanced diet necessarily.
no. Yeah, my next one is not always about a boat. It's my least boaty of all the boat stories, but
About a boat.
it's about a boat. How about that?
I was gonna say, yeah, how do they think we say it? About a boot?
Yeah. This one's also probably pretty famous.
Oh.
And that because I had heard the last name before. This is
Mm.
the story of Sir Ernest Shackleton. Uh, and
Mm.
yeah, he was
Yeah,
a
I think I
Arctic
mentioned him in the
explorer.
Third Man Syndrome episode, maybe. Because he's the one that goes to the South Pole expedition, right? South
Yeah,
Pole? Yeah. Yeah, I think
I
that's where they got the briefly, because I didn't cover him in detail, but I believe that's where they got the term third man syndrome, because
okay.
as it goes on and he's kind of feeling alone, he felt like another person was walking beside him that wasn't there or something. Yeah, yeah,
Maybe. I think uh
I heard of him. He sounds familiar.
yeah, I think there's one small part maybe where he's by himself, but yeah, we'll see. Um so he was an Arctic explorer who in 1914 decided to become the first to cross Antarctica on foot, which is pretty
Okay,
crazy
right.
to like decide to
Right.
do.
Yeah, and that's the South Pole one. Right.
Yeah,
Okay. Gotcha.
yeah. I'm looking at my world map right now. Yeah,
I know I just try to think cuz geography it's hard sometimes, you guys. We're close to the
yeah.
North Pole. That's the one we're used to. Yeah.
So yeah, I have a bunch like my next two I have a bunch of like snippets from Wikipedia because they had pretty good
Mm,
like written out about information. Yeah.
cool.
So it said that for this expedition that they had planned, there was two ships that would be employed. The Endurance was the first one, and it would carry the main party into the Weddell Sea, where or sorry, into the Weddell Sea, aiming for Fossel Bay, where a team of six, led by Shackleton, would begin the crossing of the continent. Like the whole thing, start to finish, which is crazy.
Right.
Uh, while they were supposed to be making this crossing, there was going to be a second ship, the Aurora, that would take a supporting party under the direction of Captain Aeneas McIntosh to McMurdo
Ooh.
Sound on the opposite side of the continent. And this party would kind of walk, uh, not quite trying to meet them in the middle, but they would be setting up all these supply depots across the Great Ice Barrier um
Oh,
so that they could pick
yes.
up supplies. So they would basically be walking part of the way and then walking back to the ship so that by the time they got there, they would have all these supply depots like to pick up food and supplies and
That
stuff.
sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I feel like I've
Um
heard about this because wasn't there like a race to see who could get to the South Pole first in
yeah.
well, and some other thing I heard, and yeah, other people were like, we're gonna get there first, but they didn't have the setups and you
Yeah.
know, the supply drops and whatnot. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
desolate,
Yeah, there's
what do they call it?
nothing.
Yeah, it's a tundra. It's not a hot desert tundra, it's an Arctic tundra.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
nothing there.
So
Yeah.
these like depots that they were setting up would hold food and fuel that would enable Shackleton's party to complete their journey of about 1,800 miles or 2,900 kilometers across the continent.
Damn. That's a lot.
Uh, Yeah. This expedition was largely financed by private donations, although the British government did donate money as well. Shackleton ended up receiving more than like 5,000 applications to join in on the trip between the two ships. He
Wow.
ended up having to conduct interviews to narrow down to the final crew. He based these interviews on people's temperaments, their character, and then like technical abilities of like jobs and stuff like that.
Smart.
Yeah. He finally narrowed it down to a crew of 56 people in total and set that there would be 28 people on each ship, and each ship would have its own captain, with crews that included like meteorologists, scientists, different levels of explorers, and then also two surgeons. So I think maybe one on each ship. And then there was also like 70 dogs and their handlers. Uh,
70. Man.
yeah,
That's a shit
yeah.
ton of dogs.
Yeah. Not too long into their voyage, the Endurance ended up becoming stuck in the ice. And then on the 24th of February, realizing that the ship would be trapped until the following spring, Shackleton ordered that they abandon the ship's routine and convert it into more of a winter station. Like, just basically, like, just stay there, um, but stop trying to
Okay.
move. And the ship was slowly drifting northward with the ice through the like following months. And then when spring arrived, it said when spring arrived in September. So I think spring arrives really late in the Arctic. Like by the time it warms up enough for there to be spring there, I think it's really late in the season.
Well, aren't we Antarctic, Southern Hemisphere? Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
opposite. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Opposite seasons. Yeah. So fucked up
Uh,
though. Spring, September.
right? Yeah. So when spring arrived in September, the breaking up of the ice and then later movements ended up putting extreme pressure on the ship's hull. And until this
Oh.
point, Shackleton had hoped that the ship, when released from the ice, would be able to work its way back towards the bay where they were supposed to kind of like station at.
Oh, well,
But on
yeah.
the yeah, on the 24th of October, water ended up beginning to pour into the ship, and after a few days, Shackleton gave the order to abandon the ship, saying it was going down, and the men along kind of out um like disembarked all their provisions, equipment, and transferred it to different camps that they made on the ice. So they
Oh,
were
okay.
basically completely abandoning the ship. And on the 21st of November 1915, the Endurance ship finally like slipped beneath the surface, so it like completely sunk by then.
Okay,
So it
but
was gone.
yeah, I was gonna say at least with the other abandoned ship, it's not like because they're sinking dramatically. Can't
Yeah,
you can jump out onto the ice or whatever, presumably. I mean, it's not a
yeah,
great prospect to be on
no,
this barren land, but
yeah.
it's still at least not the fucking water.
So
Damn.
for the next like 2 months, Shackleton and his party camped on a large flat floe, like ice floe, and hoping it
Mm,
would drift them slowly towards an island where they knew there was different stores of like food and supplies cached already. Uh,
okay.
yeah. They did make some failed attempts to march across the ice to the island, but eventually decided to set up another more like permanent camp. And they waited there for another month or so as their flow broke into two pieces and was like drifting. And this is when
No.
Shackleton ordered the crew into the three lifeboats that they had taken off of the Endurance and said that they were going to be putting them into the water and going towards the nearest island. Um, like as more
Okay.
of the ice broke up. Yeah.
Right.
So over the next 5 days, as far as I could tell, he and his crew left the boat, um, like left on these boats and made their way to this tiny uninhabited island called Elephant Island. They were there in the spring of 1916. And upon landing, it was actually their first time on solid ground in like 497 days. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Can you imagine being able to say that?
that's insane.
It make me
Yeah.
feel like a freaking astronaut.
Right? Yeah, it would be wild.
Yeah, I'll have to
Uh,
ask my sister like how long when she was on Navy
oh,
ship,
yeah.
like how many
How
days
long?
that equates to. Yeah, because I know she's been out
That's
there for like at
crazy.
least 6 months. That's
Wow.
wait, 3 months is 90 days. That's like 180 days or something.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh, right? I would go crazy.
Yeah. So this like elephant island or whatever that they were on was far from any
Mm,
sort of shipping routes, and they weren't
okay.
likely to be found or like anything to be there. So they made the
Mm.
decision to travel another about 720 miles to the South Georgia whaling stations.
Oh,
Um yeah, they needed like the strongest and largest lifeboat, which they dubbed the James Cayard, I think. Uh,
okay.
out of like the three that they had, they dubbed this the James Caird, I think it's pronounced. They chose this one for
Hmm.
the task, and then they worked to make some improvements to the boat so it would survive the journey.
Okay,
Um,
good.
yeah.
Shore up
So
any holes, patch up any,
yeah,
things you can.
strengthen it hopefully, stuff like
Oh,
that.
I guess.
Um, So from Wikipedia, it said that the James Caird was launched on the 24th of April, 1916, and during the next
Hmm.
15 days, it sailed through the waters of the Southern Ocean at the mercy of the stormy seas and in constant peril of capsizing.
Oh no.
Yeah. On May
Great.
8th, thanks to Worsley's navigation skills, I think he was the captain. Um, the cliffs of
Okay.
South Georgia came into sight, but hurricane force winds prevented the possibility of them landing on the island. So the
Oh
party was
no.
actually forced to ride out the storm offshore in constant danger of being dashed against the rocks. And
Jeez.
yeah, just like crushed. They
Yeah,
actually
constant danger
later,
of something every
yeah,
time.
they actually learned later that the same hurricane that they survived and like went through and waited out had actually sunk a 500-ton steamer that was bound for South Georgia from Buenos Aires.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
so like it had sunk like a huge steamer ship.
Hmm.
And they were basically on a fucking life raft, like
It sunk the
lifeboat.
Brazilian Titanic. And they're like,
Yeah,
I'll never let go, Jack.
yeah. It says that the crew dodged icebergs, enormous swells, and gale force winds, as well as waves of icy water hitting them. The crew had no sort of waterproof clothing, and they were working really hard to bail out any of the water that came into the ship with all these like buckets.
Oh no.
Uh, yeah, it it said that they barely slept, ate, or drank for their 2 week long journey, like to get uh,
Oh my
to this
god.
island. Yeah. And
They're like just
finally,
bailing water the whole time. Holy.
yeah, like just I think out of all the swells of water that was just like it was just pouring water in to the boat all the
Oof.
time from the top. Yeah. And finally, the James Caird ended up approaching South Georgia's coastline. Um, yeah, but this prevented them from reaching land. After several tries, Shackleton navigated them safely into the small inlet on the island after they had waited,
Okay.
like, I think. And rather than risking going out to sea again to try and get to the occupied side of the land, because they're on an unoccupied side, like that's where they're in that. They're like, we don't want to go out try and sail around the island. Shackleton decided to do a
Right.
land crossing, and it said although others had crossed the island before, no one had ever actually attempted this particular route that they decided to take.
Wee.
Yeah.
Oh,
Uh, out of the men, he and two other men made the decision to scale the dangerous glacier-covered mountain range. Uh, the
never.
men,
Never scale a
yeah,
glacier. Glacier
scary.
means ice, silly.
Yeah, right? It said that the men used climbing boots that they made by pushing
Oh no.
screws through the bottom, like the soles
Oh
of the shoes.
no.
That's all
They
they
made their
had,
own cleated shoes or whatever. Yeah,
basically, and
cleats.
they had some rope. That's all they really had. They were
That's so weird. I just have to say, I heard some, like, we have more foot traffic than ever since we moved offices. Now we're, with more
mm,
people. So there was people walking through, and somebody was like, I overheard their conversation. That was like, well, I could go with like, he didn't say a cleated shoe, but it was like something like a hooks or is there another word for cleats that can make on a shoe? Like
I don't
like a
know.
climbing shoe? Oh my god, he was like, I don't know. It's not that I don't like a cleated shoe, but the cleated people got to make sure the cleats are good enough or something. It was just like such a
Weird.
specific conversation that I was like, what even am I just overhearing that they're talking about right now?
Yeah, that's
So
really weird.
random. Yeah, I don't know. That's why it made me think of that. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, but they did that and they had some rope. And they successfully
Okay.
traveled this dangerous mountain terrain for like 36 hours before they were able to reach the whaling station on May 20th.
Dang.
Where obviously like they alerted for help and everything. Um, it said that the rescue of the men was attempted and foiled like 3 times by all this sea ice, kind of like blocking them. But eventually, all
Yeah.
22 other men, like because there was three of them there, the 22 others they had left behind were all rescued. And you might be wondering what happened to the like Aurora that was supposed to meet them on the other side of the continent that they didn't get to. Um,
Yeah, they had made
the
contact with someone I remember.
So
So,
the second ship, Aurora, had been blown from its anchorage where they had like dropped anchor, and it had been driven out to sea. The ship was adrift for many months before it was able to be returned to New Zealand. And this group, despite
oh,
many hardships of their own, they actually had successfully carried out all these depot drop offs that they had planned. But three people
okay.
ended up dying during it, including that of its commander, Aeneas McIntosh. He had died along with two others. So, yeah, they also had
Okay.
some stuff going on. I didn't really, there was like a separate Wikipedia page all about like Aurora, and I didn't really read it. So, they probably had a lot of shit going on too. Yeah,
I feel like yes. I feel like I've heard someone covering stories on this
yeah,
situation. Yeah, 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 yeah. Like yeah, it's crazy fascinating.
yeah. This one I actually heard on the Watcher, like entertainment, they do a thing called Puppet History,
Okay, you
where the
were
one
just
guy
talking about
does like,
fair. Yeah.
yeah, he does like puppet theater where he like teaches them about like something that happened in history. And this one, like part of
Nice.
it was well, they talked about like the race through like Antarctica kind of thing. So it had some
Okay.
of this. But it was talking about the two people that were like doing it at the same time. Um,
Yeah. That's
so that's
interesting. I like
fun.
that
I'll
shit.
put
Yeah.
I'll put a link to that on the website because they also covered my last one as well, which is how I found out about it. And I
Really?
just thought it was crazy.
Your
Um,
last
yeah,
case? Wait.
yeah, I have one more story. Like crazy
Oh.
survival story.
So like meaning this next one,
Yeah.
not last week's
They've
episode. Okay, gotcha.
no, this one.
Oh,
Yeah, they
exciting.
covered the Antarctica one. They also covered this one, but this one was like from one of their
Ooh,
older seasons. But I'll link both of them on
okay.
the website like episode page because they're pretty
Nice.
cute. They do fun episodes to watch. So yeah.
I think they came up in one of my
Um
watch lists, maybe Amazon Prime. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
wow. What?
This one is also very popular. I hadn't heard it before I
Okay.
watched their episode about it, but it did come up on a lot of things when I was looking up
Oh.
like crazy survival stories because I feel like this is just one of the craziest.
Oh.
And you might know it. It's the survival of Violet Jessup, and she has been described as either, I'm going to say, the luckiest or the unluckiest woman alive
Oh, the
because
name. The
yeah, she ended
name
up
is familiar. And wait, you
yeah.
said ship things, so is she the one that like survives like three fucking shipwrecks or something?
Yeah, she is. It's
Wow.
pretty crazy.
I feel like there's
Um,
also like a cat that came up on podcasts that was like, "This is the unsinkable cat," and it was in like three shipwrecks in like World War
oh,
II or something. I was like, "What?
there was a cat mentioned in one of them, but it said that
Really?
the cat oh, it was in the last one, the Antarctica one. There was a cat on board and it
Uh,
ended up getting shot because they knew it couldn't survive like
oh
off
my
of the ship.
god!
So they shot it. Yeah.
Why? Why would you waste a bullet on shooting the cat if it's gonna starve? What?
Yeah.
Couldn't you have just taken a little tiny pillow and just suffocated it to death?
Oh my God.
You know?
No, much rather get shot. Anyway,
It
not
all seems
important.
bad. Oh, okay. All right, I'm
But
ready.
yeah. So Violet Jessup, she was born on October 2nd, 1887,
Okay.
in Argentina. It said that her parents are like Irish in heritage.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and she was the first. It said the first of 9 children. So I think that just means she's the oldest. That's just a weird way of saying she's the oldest of 9 children. Uh,
Yeah, I've heard that one. Yeah, occasionally. Yep.
yeah. Um, it said that 6 of whom survived, so I think 3 of their siblings had died.
Mm,
Um, and
2 or 3, I guess. Yeah.
Jessup spent most of her childhood caring for many of her younger siblings.
Okay.
Uh, she became very ill at some point as a child, and it's presumed later on that she had tuberculosis when she was
Oh
sick.
no.
And
The
she did it
consumption.
obviously. Yeah.
Yeah.
She did end up surviving despite her doctor's prediction that it would kill her. So she lived through like
Wow.
tuberculosis.
Yeah.
And
Not many people
yeah,
do, I would say,
yeah.
survive.
She followed in her mother's footsteps as a sea stewardess. Something
Oh,
said that she was like a nurse and a stewardess. So, um,
interesting.
yeah. Uh, it also said that she had to dress down to make herself less attractive in order to get hired as a stewardess. There's a picture of
Oh.
her. She is very pretty.
Aw.
She looks, yeah, she
Dirtied
looks,
herself up. No.
I want to see the, yeah, I don't know. She looks cute, like little old school, like little nurse's uniform. But,
Oh, okay, when she's all
um,
dressed up. Yeah, I'll have a look here.
yeah. Yeah. And then at age 21, she did her first stewardess position. And that was on a Royal Marine Line aboard Orinoco in 1908.
Ooh.
So she was 21 then.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. And
I think I see it now. I'm just oh, it
yeah,
wouldn't
it's just the
open.
last one, the last picture. That was the only picture I could find
I-
of her.
yeah, I
But
love the old-fashioned like nurses uniforms
right?
and stuff. They're very, very
So classic.
yeah,
Uh
exactly. And now we're just like, look at our slutty nurses every
yeah.
Halloween. We're such a treasure to our previous generations.
Right?
Amazing.
Yeah. Um so yeah, like 3 years after her first job working as a stewardess, but this is 1911, Jessup began working on the Olympic, which was a luxury ship that was the largest civilian liner at the time.
Okay.
And
I heard of
uh,
her.
yeah,
Sorry.
September 20th, 1911, it left from Southampton and ended up colliding with British warship HMS Hawke near the Isle of
Right.
Wight. It said that there
Yeah, it didn't
was
get
like
very
the
far then, did it? Like out into the
mm,
Atlantic.
no, I don't
That's
know how many
not.
days.
No,
Like,
that's not that far off the UK from what I
yeah.
know. That's crazy.
Uh, yeah. So it said that there was no fatalities in this collision and the ship made
Oh,
it back to
wow.
port without sinking. And it
Okay.
did say later on in like her memoirs that Jessup chose not to even discuss this collision like in them. So I don't think it was anything like too crazy. Uh,
Okay.
and she
Especially
ended
not
up
after you've been
continue.
involved in some crazy, crazy
Yeah,
ones, I
the
guess.
other ones are crazy. She continued working on the ship until she was transferred to its sister ship in April of 1912. Uh,
Ah.
yeah. So at this point, 1912, she's 24 years old when she boards the RMS Titanic as a stewardess, which is just like
She's
so
like, this one
shitty.
will do better. Much better
Yeah.
run.
So just 4 days into their like trip, April 14th is when it struck the iceberg, and then it said it
Okay.
sank in like 2 hours and 40 minutes. Um, which is pretty crazy. That's really fast. I have
Yeah.
lots of I think basically the rest of this is um oh yeah, basically other than my last little bit, this is all from Wikipedia. Like copied.
Okay. Yeah.
Um It said that Jessup later described in her memoirs how she was ordered up onto deck to serve as an example on how to behave for the non-English speakers who could not follow the instructions that were being given to them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She was watching as the crew loaded the lifeboats, and she was later ordered onto lifeboat 16. And as the boat was being lowered, one of the Titanic's officers gave her a baby to look after.
Oh,
The next morning, Jessup and the rest of the survivors were rescued by the RMS Carpathia and were taken to New York
you're
City
right.
on April 18th. And
Yeah.
according to Jessup, while aboard the Carpathia, a woman, presumably the baby's mother, grabbed the baby she was holding and
Hopefully.
ran off crying without saying a word. And
Good
it said
Lord,
that
I hope it
after,
was her mother.
right? After arriving,
Ah, baby, baby, baby. Yeah. But
After arriving in New York City, she later returned to Southampton.
okay.
Yeah, there was
Wow.
some stuff later. What the frick did it say? I didn't keep it because it seemed very contradictory. It was saying that like she talked about in her memoirs or something that like 20 years later or something like that, some woman called her and asked her if like she had been aboard the Titanic and she had looked after a baby, and the person, and she was like, yeah, and they were just like, I was that baby, and then like laughed and hung up the
Right.
phone and stuff. But then the person that was like writing in that source said that only one baby was documented or something to have arrived in um been
Mm.
on the Carpathia or whatever from like that lifeboat, and
Wow. Only one.
that baby was a boy, so like a woman wouldn't be calling her or
Interesting.
whatever. So yeah, it was a little confusing. I didn't bother like keeping that in my notes because I was like, who knows. She said it was likely, she didn't feel like it was a prank, but the person in the source was like trying to basically convince her, but like it was likely just a prank, like, you know.
Gotcha.
Yeah, who's to say though. um
Hmm.
and then yeah, so she survives the Titanic. Now she's in Southampton. In the First World War, Jessup was a stewardess for the British Red Cross, and on the morning of the 21st of November 1916, she was aboard the HMHS Britannic, which was the younger sister ship of the Olympic and the Titanic. And
Is it the Britannica? Or is it just
no,
okay, yeah.
Britannic.
Oh, all right, okay. I thought I
Um,
heard of this one before too, yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, it's
The
like the sister trio.
yeah, all shit.
Yeah.
So the Britannic had been converted into a hospital ship, and then it ended up sinking in the Aegean Sea after an unexplained
Aegean, I
explosion.
think.
Oh, Aegean, whatever. After an unexplained explosion after it ran into a mine that was planted by a German U-boat. And
Dang.
yeah, Britannic sank within 55 minutes, so super, super fast.
Oh shit,
And
yeah.
this one's like, this one's the insanity because it killed 30 of the 1,066 people on board.
30?
Um,
Okay.
yeah, it killed 30 of them, but while the Britannic was
Yeah.
sinking, Jessup and the other passengers were nearly killed by the ship's propellers that were shredding the lifeboats that collided with them. Which is what I
Oh
remember from
no.
the puppet history episode because
Puppet
they
history. Sounds
they
so
always
funny.
do they always do an outro like
Oh
song at the end, and the
no.
puppet that they
Okay.
had that sang the song was one of the propellers that was going to kill, like, that was killing
Oh
all the
my
ships, and
god.
how but the propeller was so sorry that it was killing everybody and hacking them into little pieces and body parts were flying everywhere. And I was like,
But
"Oh my
was
god."
it though? Oh dear lord.
It was pretty cute. You have to watch the episode. It's great.
Yeah, I'll
Um
have to take your word for it.
yeah, but she talks about like this in her memoirs and everything too, that the propellers were shredding the lifeboats that collided with them.
Oh,
Jessup
yeah.
ended up having to jump out of her lifeboat because it was heading towards the propellers, so she needed to get
Oh
out of
my
it
god.
because they had no way to like get them away. And this
Mhm.
resulted in a traumatic head injury, which some sources said was like a skull fracture, which she ended up surviving. Like obviously, even though she had that, like she didn't drown or anything. Um, yeah. In her memoir, she described the scene she witnessed as Britannic went under, quote, "The white pride of the ocean's medical world dipped her head a little, then a little lower and still lower. All the deck machinery fell into the sea like a child's toys. When she took a fearful plunge, her stern rearing hundreds of feet into the air, until with a final roar she disappeared into the depths." Um, like just like
That's
crazy.
beautiful.
Yeah. Um, and then it
Yeah.
also said that there was two other people, Arthur John Priest and Archie Jewell, who were aboard the Britannic, who were also other survivors of the Titanic.
Really?
They
Wow.
also survived both.
That is
Yeah,
so
which was kind of
weird.
interesting. It was like
Yeah,
maybe all
those
three of them weren't
faces.
good luck.
If you survive
Um,
two, if you survive one, like,
yeah,
disaster, that's
she
insane. If you
survived
survive
three.
two,
She
or
survived
three,
three
I mean, it just
and
keeps upping the
tuberculosis.
ante. Yeah.
Yeah, and tuberculosis.
Crazy.
Um,
Yeah, and
my
that.
last there was like a bunch of other stuff she did, but just basically to sum it up, she spent like the next 30 years of her life working on various ships. She kind of just bounced back and forth between them.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and then she ended up retiring in 1950. Um, a little bit before that, at the age of 36, she had gotten married to a steward, who basically like did the same kind of thing she did. His name was John James Lewis. But they ended up
Shit,
oh
sorry.
jeez. They ended up divorcing about a year later. So it was a pretty short-lived
Oh,
marriage. I didn't read about any other marriages. Uh, yeah, but she
okay.
retired in like 1950, and then she ended up dying of congestive heart failure on May 5th, 1971, at the age of 83. So,
Wow.
yeah, she lived
Crazy. 71.
a great long life.
It's
Having
right. Seems
survived.
to span a huge like age of time, right?
Uh,
A lot happened in the 1900s.
yeah, it's like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Of inventions. Speaking of
oh
inventions, we can take a quick break so I can use the modern day toilet. Woohoo!
yeah, we'll be back for more.
Oh, that was crazy. All right, let's take
Hello, Spooklings,
I'm Jason,
and I'm Kathy.
and we're the hosts of the weekly podcast, All Hallows Eve Podcast.
We are a husband and wife duo with a passion for anything spooky, macabre, and true crime, sprinkled with our own twist of comedy.
We explore topics such as the history of Halloween, the Butcher of Plainfield, Hocus Pocus 2, urban legends, superstitions, and more.
So come join us as we go down the rabbit hole that is All Hallows Eve Podcast.
Listen and follow us at allhallowsevepodcast.com or your favorite podcast provider.
Stay spooky, my friends.
All right. Welcome back. I also have some information today. Some of which is near disasters also, and is kind of fun. Kind of funny how we didn't talk much about specifically what we were doing for this one.
Yeah,
But you'll see. Yeah, I figured you were going more traditional things people see, and then I I looked up some different things which gave me lists of near death experiences as far as like physically near death, and then a few that were just some more like not necessarily famous people but famous near death experiences in history that have been kind of written down. So
okay, interesting.
but the first part, I was like very much right what you were doing because I was like, here's a list of famous celebrities who were almost killed to death.
Killed to death.
Well, I didn't think you were going to go that way. But yes.
Well, we had talked about it, like doing survival stories and that kind of stuff. You've talked about it like so many times, so that's all I could remember when I looked back on like our episode theme, near death experiences. I was like, oh, that must be the survival
Oh,
stories.
really?
Yeah.
Mm, yeah. Well, they're both very much the same thing. These are times certain people almost died, which was just a quick listicle I had. So half of mine was a little bit of near death experiences from celebrities. Like the time Thomas Edison was nearly killed by a flying badger. Um,
That sounds
because
interesting.
he apparently loved trains quite a lot. Which okay, like and we know he invented things and stuff like that and whatever. But he like was so into trains that one time the train conductor decided that he could not only ride on the train, because I'm sure he liked to be like up in the, you know, what do they call it on a train? A cockpit or whatever, like where the engineer is. But um they decided he could ride on something called the cow catcher, which is actually attached to the front of the train because it comes out
Oh.
almost like a rake kind of thing, and
Oh, I've
it's to
seen that.
push
Yeah.
animals off. Yes, I feel like I've seen it too. It would like push things off the tracks. Um,
Oh,
and
okay.
as he wrote on this completely non-regulated non-seat on top of the
Yeah.
train, a badger got picked up by the cow catcher, as it were, and it was flung directly towards his face at great speed and, in his words, with great violence. And it was a near miss to his face. So That one could have been
Huh.
by inches. A badger to the face of Thomas Edison.
Well, I mean, if it's there to like get animals off of the tracks, you have to assume at some point an animal is gonna come towards you if you're laying on that or whatever.
Right? I don't even. He was obviously just like splayed out on it because it's not a
Yeah.
seat in any shape or
No.
form. So there's no handholds. He was probably just hanging on for dear life.
Fuck.
Apparently, lots of famous people are insane.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a more modern celebrity. Adam Devine from Modern Family, Pitch Perfect. He's
Okay.
kind of that short, funny guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was hit by a truck when he was 11. He was actually hit by a cement truck, like literally.
Wow.
Um, yeah, like most of us would be like, I feel like I was hit by a truck. He was like, no. You don't know. I was hit by a truck. He was like sitting in the middle of the road on his bike or something. So if the bike hadn't taken the brunt of the impact, he would almost certainly have died. He broke nearly every bone below his skin, almost had to take his legs clean off, but they eventually saved them. So it's like pretty bad.
Jeez.
I
Yeah, that's
know.
scary.
It's just crazy, right? Like I can't believe he survived that. Um they had to put him into a medically induced coma for like 2 weeks, and then at least 26 surgeries later, he was discovered that he leaned on comedy to get him through the dark times, as it were. So I think a lot of those times you
Wow.
hear stories where people are like, whoa, and then I had to lean on like what could be funny still, right? It's like you've been through some dark times. What the fuck can you laugh about? You have to laugh, right?
Yeah, that's crazy. 26 surgeries, though.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot. That's insane.
I never would have guessed. Absolutely ever. He looks
No.
completely normal. Like, I don't know, like nothing facially, you know what I mean? Reconstructed or anything. I don't know how else to say.
Yeah. And
Yeah, he
like,
just
even
looks.
in movies, I'm trying to think if I would have ever even thought like he would have had maybe any like problems with his legs or
Oh, yeah,
anything like
yeah.
that since they were
True.
like almost not saved. Like that's pretty dramatic. I've never really
Right?
noticed anything. Wow.
Oh, just like almost severed or something.
Crazy.
Okay, this next one I had actually heard of before, because of my podcast addiction. But it's that Johnny Cash was nearly gutted by an ostrich.
What? That's
Fun,
really
right?
weird.
Okay, so this is on his own property, as they call him, the Man in Black, was hanging out at what's been called his own version of Graceland because they called it the House of Cash. So it's his whole like
Mm,
estate. I think I read there was
yeah.
like a studio, recording studio, whatever. But also they had like exotic animal farm or whatever, and he was walking around outside, and there had also been a bad winter that had killed several of the birds, and one who happened to have lost his mate was extremely agitated, I guess. So the poor little emus, except they're not so little. um Johnny Cash came into his path, and the emu acted aggressively, but Cash ended up walking away. However, the next time they crossed paths, he didn't get away so lucky. I mean, he did because he lived, but the bird
Yeah.
struck out with its 4-inch claws that can, like, literally disembowel you. But after it broke his lower ribs and ripped into him from his chest down to his belt, it got stuck on his belt. So he's like, I think my belt kind of saved me that day, just a little
Oh
bit.
God.
Because
Wow.
they just like, they sound like velociraptors. Like they just can like
Yeah,
rip you
that's what I'm
open.
pitching. Picturing. Just crack. Like a fucking
Right?
tiger.
Like, he lived after that. I can't believe that
Wow.
that was not his cause of death. Um, yeah, he credits the belt for saving his life. Otherwise, he would have been the Ken doll in black. Oh. I keep hearing there was a Ken doll song in the Barbie movie.
Yeah,
But
I'm just Ken. Anywhere else
I'm
he'd be a
just
10.
Ken. Okay. I still haven't seen
It's
it, but it sounds
so
funny.
good.
That sounds funny.
It's all about how he just loves Barbie so much and Barbie doesn't care about him.
Oh
But all the
no.
Kens, they do this song and then they by the end of the song they're all good cuz you know what? Um what are they saying? They're like, "I'm a Ken." And then the guy goes like, "So am I." Put your hand in mine. And they're like, "Yeah, cuz we're just Ken." Like so then they're all empowered because they're just
Okay.
Kens. Yeah. And that's
Nice.
okay because they're really nice guys. And it's okay. It's pretty
Aw.
cute. It's one of the
Yeah.
most catchy songs like in that whole movie.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes me think of Simpsons because they have the Malibu Stacy dolls that Smithers is
Oh.
obsessed with. But that sounds funny. And yeah, everything I heard about it was sounding pretty funny. I was like, what? All right. Okay. So on to the rest of them. They NDE, the near death experience of Black Sabbath nearly pranking their drummer to death, Bill Ward. So, similar to that story, the Tin Man actor in The Wizard of Oz, the guy named Buddy Ebsen, whose paint, the silver paint, nearly killed him after it was applied all over his body. We've heard of this, right?
Yeah, I think I briefly heard about that before.
It's weird, but it happened. Yeah, got sick or whatever. It's like body paint gone bad.
Yeah.
One night when Bill Ward passed out, the rest of the band decided it would be fun to coat him in gold shiny body paint. Full gold member, as I put it.
Oh, yeah.
And Yami, I don't know, and Ozzy, the guys in the band, thought this was super funny, or at least until Bill started like convulsing and vomiting. Paramedics had to give him adrenaline, and they cleaned him with paint stripper while chastising the rest of them for being reckless idiots.
Yeah. They did that on Mythbusters.
Really, I can see that.
Yeah. I think
Some of
Jamie
them,
and
I don't know
Adam
if it's
both like
true.
painted each other and then they were monitoring, I think, their temperature and like heart rate and stuff. I can't remember the results on whether or not it was true, but I know they did it.
Okay. Like, I feel like it's maybe
Yeah.
a combination of things, but who am I to tell? Um, that one. Okay, yeah. Number 5, the on the near death experience list, the yes, my straight listicle. Graham Norton was mugged and nearly bled to death. In 1989, as a drama school student, he was mugged at knife point, then stabbed. He lost half his blood, lying in shock on the sidewalk until an elderly couple found him. He hadn't even realized he'd been stabbed. He was in so much shock. Also, he's a guy.
Wow.
Do you ever see when he you look up different interviews with celebrities and stuff, and then he's like the British guy, and the background is like all that red and
Yeah,
pink
I've
and
watched
stuff.
some of the episodes.
Yeah.
He's not my favorite. He seems a little like unhinged of an interviewer, but
He's been stabbed. No, I don't know, but yeah, yeah, it's like you recognize him though.
yeah.
I guess that's why they included him. Hunter S. Thompson nearly killed, but then also saved Bill Murray. As it says, or as it goes, Buddy, nope. Bill was studying to play Thompson, and they were at a pool in Aspen when Murray decided it would be cool to try a daring kind of Houdini style escape. So Hunter S. Thompson obligingly tied him to a chair and threw him into the pool.
Oh my god. What the hell?
Recipe for disaster, right?
Yeah, what the heck?
It said that he had planned to like be able to stand up if he needed to get a breath, but the bindings were too tight and would not allow it. And so when
Hmm.
Hunter S. Thompson kind of realized that he wasn't just faking it or whatever, he fished him out again and saw that his gasps and struggles for air were for real. So it was like,
The
all well
fuck?
ends well. I know,
Oh my
celebrities, right?
god.
Dolph Lundgren nearly killed Sylvester Stallone on the set of Rocky the Fourth. They had a big fight scene, and during the boxing match, blows are landing on Sylvester, and he felt a burning after three punches. But much like any middle-aged man, he ignored it. Later, he had trouble even breathing, so he sought medical attention. Turns out his heart had been kind of rattling around in his chest so hard it started to swell, and he was medevaced and spent 8 days in hospital in intensive care. Thanks to his fight
Jeez.
scene.
Wow. I
Ouch,
thought maybe his,
careful.
like, a rib punctured, like, something and he had, like, internal bleeding or something.
Well, as we know,
Wow.
that's not even what happened to Houdini. He just got punched random times, which seemed to aggravate things. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Um, uh, yeah, to cap out this list, number 8, a fan nearly killed Frank Zappa during a concert, which was in 1971, when a man named Trevor Charles Howell bum rushed the stage that Zappa was performing on. He was pushed into a concrete orchestra pit, breaking his neck and crushing his larynx.
Jeez. Wow.
Not good at all. Turns out the whole reason the guy bum rushed the stage was that the man's girlfriend had a huge crush on Zappa. Yay.
Then you nearly fucking killed him.
Right? He ended up in a wheelchair for more than a year, and his voice was permanently damaged, and he sang at a lower octave for the rest of his life. So, like,
Octave.
his voice sounded different.
Wow.
Yeah, I probably could have queued up some audio recordings, but still crazy, right?
Yeah.
Um, we're still on these very literal near-death experiences. But last, to cap out this list, 9 and 10, George Lucas nearly died in a car crash. He loved racing cars and dreamed of being a race car driver. Then a slip up while street racing, where he was hit by the competition while starting to turn as the other car was trying to pass, where his car ended up broadsided and rolled several times, wrapping itself around a tree. As some pointed out, kind of like in his movie American Graffiti. But he had a
Mm.
very long recovery from like broken bones and bruised lungs, which sounds just a little bit awful. Um, After which he turned his focus to movie making as a less dangerous hobby slash career. My words.
Yeah, and then you made fucking Star Wars.
But at least he was safe not doing any of it. I don't know.
Yeah, he wasn't like Fast and the Furiousing it up anymore. Tokyo
Oh
Drift
man.
around the corner.
And you know, if you get talk to Pat, he talks about who George Lucas left to take it over, Kathleen Kennedy, and he'll never shut up about her. Finally, for that list, Martin Lawrence went into a coma from heat stroke one day in Big Mama's house, where Martin was always wearing a full fat suit, or at least covered in several thick layers, because he was always playing that fat character. So, on one
Hmm.
particular day, as the story goes, he was running around filming when he collapsed from heat stroke. This all led to the overexertion, landing him in the hospital. They basically had to put him into a 3-day coma, because his temperature hit a whopping 107 degrees before they like got it under control. But yeah, that's what happened to him.
Jeez.
It's crazy. That's what you get if you type in NDEs and famous accounts. However, there are some historical accounts going back as far as cavemen.
Yeah. I
Okay,
mean, people almost die all the time, so I'm sure there's millions of
right?
stories.
Going back years, yeah. But cave paintings in Spain and France show storyboards of people's amazing accounts. And I was just like, they didn't give me any details on the cave painting ones, but I just was like, wow, that's crazy that something can be associated with near-death experiences and that from cave paintings. But in modern days, there's even been a 13-question scale called the Grayson scale. It helps assess whether a person has had a genuine NDE, near-death
Okay.
experience. The questions include things like, did past scenes of your life come back to you? Did you see a bright light? An unearthly world? Felt separate from your body? Saw deceased relatives or religious spirits? All those sort of things. And scientists have a theory that these events result from a multi-sensory integration in the cortex. Duh. No, I don't know. Sounds fancy. So, in the historical accounts, number one on, because basically my sources were like two listicles, is the myth of ear or air. Air? Recounted in Plato's Republic, written about a soldier who experiences a near-death experience that died during a battle. One source I found said he was sometimes called Air the Pamphletian. Sure.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know of it, so
His name, I don't know. But one of the only sites where I could find a backup to the story from GreekMythology.com, the myth of Air is a tale in Greek mythology about a man who died on a battlefield and returned to life 9 days later, recounting what happened in the afterlife. The word myth was used in the ancient Greek sense, meaning account, rather than the present day meaning. So, afterwards, he came to a place where either 2 or 4, depending on the accounts, doors stood facing him. There were judges to decide who went to which afterlife based on their life on Earth. Sort of good souls to the sky, and not so good would return to the Earth to, like, go through it again, I guess.
okay.
Yeah. Quote, souls return from the sky filled with positive feelings, while souls return from the earth talked about the misery and punishments they faced. The worst souls, murderers and criminals, could not exit the earth. The sky souls were clean and happy. The earth exit souls were dirty and unhappy. But Air was told he would not be judged this way, but would instead be a messenger to humankind. Days later, he was led to something called the Spindle of Necessity. Necessity of Ananke was a primordial goddess and personification of fate. Oh, fun. This one had some Greek influence, so I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Now, their souls would receive a lottery name, and upon choosing their next life's path, went under the throne to the river Leth, or forgetfulness. The first soul, having traveled through the sky in the previous area, decided to become a dictator. Oh, yeah, this is why I included this quote, because it was weird when that happened. Though, he didn't realize that he was destined to eat his own children because of his actions. Air
What?
realized that the souls that had traveled through the sky and had not lived the punishment of the other path often chose bad things for their next lives, while the opposite happened for the souls that had been punished. I don't know. It was interesting. Then the soldiers were told to drink something that would help them forget their previous lives. After they fell asleep, they went to their new bodies, but Air skipped this so that he would remember the process. It's like
Oh,
he's
okay.
the only one awake to the glitch in the Matrix or something.
Yeah.
When Air woke, he was in his old body on a funeral pyre with fellow soldiers, about to be burned as a dead body. Fortunately, he made it known he was alive and could pass on his message. Yeah.
Don't kill me! Don't set me on fire!
I'm alive. Okay,
Yeah, that
this
would be
guy was
pretty
called
bad.
Cleo Demas. I just started calling him Cleo. A book written by Lucian called The Liar speaks of Cleo. Cleo fell gravely ill and was attended by Antigonus, but still grew sicker. He lay feverish for 7 days before having his near-death experience. He woke to a young man in a white cloak before him. The man led him to a place that resembled Hades in the underworld. Cleo saw Tantalus, the rich but wicked king, and Titius. Wait, hang on. I'm like Titius 9. I think that was supposed to be a bracket.
Oh.
Titius, a giant chained to a rock, and Sisyphus, that king forced to roll a boulder up the hill for eternity. Heard of that one. He was led to the judgment hall and met with Aeacus, a judge of justice and a king of justice, and Charon, the ferryman of Hades itself. Not the ferryman. Hades got there and read the names of the nearly dead. Suddenly, Pluto told Cleo to go away because his thread was not yet out. He really wanted a blacksmith named Demise instead. It was just a little mix up. So, when he woke shortly after, his fever had abated, and even stranger still, Demolis passed away soon after. I was right. Number 3, Prince Gad, from the Acts of Thoman, an early 3rd century New Testament text, an apocryphal tale based on your view of the Bible. We all know we love the Bible here. No. But apocryphal meaning a story of statement or of doubtful authenticity, although widely circulated as being true. So I guess kind of like a rumor, a hot rumor. I don't know. Starring Thomas, a Christian apostle to India, and Indo-Parthian king Gondopharus the First. On a visit to India, King G's brother fell ill, and for some reason the king imprisons Thomas and a merchant named Haben. Then Gad dies. Gad goes to heaven, where he notices that Thomas has constructed the king a palace there. The angels have mercy and let Gad go. But then, as they place clothing back on Gad, his soul entered his body and was back, baby. To which I literally wrote, like the meme of Joey Tribbiani, I'm back, baby. Or meme, gif, whatever. You know, the thing. The king and Gas convert to Christianity and celebrate the Eucharist with Thomas and everyone. Yes, of course. And then Timarchus of Charonia. Timarchus sounds like Jamarcus from Modern Family. One of their gay friends.
Oh.
So, yeah. That's what makes me think of anyway. Timmy was a student of Socrates, and as Plutarch recounted later, had wandered into a crypt and was lost there for 2 days and 2 nights. His family thought he must be dead, but then he returned, and with quite a tale to tell. First, he'd been thrust into complete darkness, then prayed and lay for a long time. He knew not if he was awake or asleep and just felt time passing. But suddenly he felt himself struck upon the head. He felt his soul released from his body, followed by auditory hallucinations and buzzing and other unearthly noises. He could look down and see the underworld down a great abyss, and hear the cries and roars of the humans and the beasts trapped below. But while a guide appeared not really in a body per se, it asked Timmy if he wants to see his relatives. So he said, sure. And after doing that, he showed him a sneaky peeky into the future. Pretty cool.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
I'd be down for that.
I know there was like absolutely no details though, and they were just like, then he woke up on the floor of the crypt, alive.
Oh,
Yay! Great. And then appeared a Roman shepherd is another story that happened after a period of pestilence, which caused many to fall ill and die. And this shepherd was a shepherd to the emperor. His loved ones all came to pay their respects on his deathbed, and then they said, okay, he's done. But later, he recalled how he had been taken to heaven, where they gave him a little spoiler about who would die at House of Valerian, and Valerian himself would survive. So, to further back up his claims, he started speaking in tongues previously unknown to him, such as Greek. He spoke like several new languages, in fact.
Oh, that's creepy.
Right?
I don't like that. Sounds like demon possession.
It's like, can you do that? Nope, not usually. He died only like 2 days after his near-death experience, and all his death predictions came true.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yep. Then there was someone called Kerma. I'm guessing it's how you pronounce it. I'm just gonna go ahead, say right here, there's not a lot of information we could find on a lot of these. It would take me a lot of time to, I don't know, textbooks where I'm like, this is not talking about what I want. But
Jeez.
he had like a book called Caring for the Dead, all about burial practices and prayers and stuff, saints and the dead. And it also included a description of a near-death experience, which talked about Kerma, who was a man in the town of Tulaim, close to the town of Hippo in Algeria. A poor member of the working class, Kerma became ill and lay unconscious and close to death for days. He saw deceased loved ones and people being judged by their deeds on earth, and he was in paradise. After he returned, he was told to return to his family and be baptized if he wanted to go to heaven. He asked to visit another man named Kerma, an iron worker. Oh, but that was basically because the man was found dead, and Kerma knew it was because he'd been called to his fate, as he was the Kerma who was supposed to die. They just had a little mix up where they call the wrong
one.
name. Same name, wrong person, yeah. Also, there was Thespesius, told by Plutarch. This starts as a story of Aridius of Sully, who fell from a great height and broke his neck. 3 days later, he was sent for burial, but recovered. He recalled that he had in fact died and left his body through the top of his head. He was shown some sort of afterlife, which caused him to change his ways, being more community-minded than ever. And he changed his name then to Thespesius, which meant divine or wonderful.
Okay, oh, Gordo, go away. Hi.
Oh, hello. Hi, Gordo.
Can you not?
buddy. Okay, I think I have 2 more. Or 3, I guess. Thespesius. Did I say that one? Divine or wonderful. Yeah. Venerable Nichizo, a Japanese monk whose story was depicted in the 13th century origins of Kitano Taijin Shrine and other manuscripts. One day in 941, that's right, 941,
That's a
He
long
had a
time ago.
very high temperature. Sounds fake, right? Yeah. And his throat swelled and constricted, like shut. And as he died, he saw a monk who brought him a drink of mountain spring water. Then some comely youths brought him more water. Next, the deity Bodhisattva Zagongen, I'm not sure, showed up on a boulder looking monkish. The monk led him to the top of the mountain where a pure land existed. The monk told him how he was a peacock in a previous life. He also
That'd be
requested that
fun.
he follow the Bodhisattva protector of law. What's that?
Oh, I said that'd be fun, being a peacock in a previous life.
Hell yeah, sounds confident as fuck. And then, yeah, I wanted to make a stupid joke because the next line, the prime minister, dignified moral god, then appeared out of the sky and invited him to visit his palace, which was on a beautiful island. It's the whole prime minister of dignified moral god that made me want to make a stupid. That's what Trudeau wants to think he is. No.
Yeah, it's quite the name.
Right? So, such a moniker. He was then given a tour of heaven and hell. He is told to crawl into this hole to be reborn, and he wakes 13 days later into basically the same old life. So I'm not sure what message he was supposed to pass on. But then there was Saint Christina the Astonishing from the 12th and 13th century. Christina was in her early 20s when she was working as a shepherd and then had a seizure where she woke to find herself on the ground, but also didn't fully awake as they like pronounced her dead. And then during her funeral, she wakes up for realsies, starts levitating, and almost actually hits the roof.
That's creepy.
She like sees purgatory, God, and then God gives her a choice: go on living or go to heaven. She chose to go back to help others to live, because she believes she could like do better on earth. From then on, she lived a life of poverty and avoided human contact. She also threw herself into fires and willingly got attacked by dogs, but was always unharmed.
What the fuck?
I
You throw
don't know.
yourself into fire? I don't
Yeah,
feel
and
like that's necessary.
unless you're having a moment like Pam on The Office when they hit those whole coals ready. But like, yeah, it reminds me of their stories I've listened to. Like one earlier today was like, oh, remember those lunatic asylums? Yeah, it's just like you could be put in there because you were poor and then basically tortured to death. Not cool. I'm sorry. I'm yelling. They thought she was possessed, so they put her in jail twice at least. Then she decided to live at the Dominican monastery, where she died for good at the age of 74. Finally,
Wow.
Pierre-Jean de Montchamp's patient in northern France, where a pharmacist in Paris falls unconscious, and Montchamp's staff became concerned at the sudden turn of events as they worried he may not wake again. He meanwhile experienced a light so bright and pure that he knew he must be in heaven. He said it was the nicest moment of his life. But Montchamp, typical doctor type, concluded that the likely medical explanation was too much blood flow to the head. And that is, of course, the
Wow.
culprit. But that's all we know
Just
about
bleed. Just
doctors.
bloodletting, probably. I think like fucking leeches or something.
Yeah,
I
that's probably
prescribe
his
leeches.
answer. Let's get rid of some blood. Anyway, that's my segment. Yeah.
Wow.
I know, we went in some weird ways. We went some like literal near-death experiences, and then I don't know, I had some that like weirdly came up through history where I was like not expecting them to go back that far.
No, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Like, I think we decided what we're doing next week, right? Is it still the uh
Oh,
I know it
yeah.
was either indigenous folklore? Was that the one we chose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
so to us, that's kind of Native American or indigenous to our lands folklore.
Yeah. Because
Or at
we're
least that's the way I'm interpreting it. Because there's obviously, like, you go to New Zealand and stuff, and they have their own, like, tribes and whatnot. But
yeah. Go
yeah.
stick to like stuff in Canada because we're
Yeah.
coming up on, well, in Canada we have, it's called like Orange Shirt Day. That'll be on September 30th.
That's right.
It's part of like the Truth and Reconciliation stuff. Like, I don't know when they
Yeah.
started it, a few years ago with like
True.
all the stuff about like residential schools and everything that they've been
It's like, yeah, trying to make it right for
yeah, so
what we've done in the past. Yeah.
yeah, we thought it'd be
People
a
be like,
nice
"Oh, Canada, you're so
opportunity.
nice." It's like, no, we've done some shitty things too. Just, and I'm sure around the time you guys were having your civil war and whatnot, we're all like, "Oh yeah, we can make all these kids do whatever we want them to." And it's like, no, no, they have their own cultures and beliefs. Like, let's not
Yeah.
stomp them out. Yeah.
Yeah, so we thought it'd be a nice time to go through. We're gonna do a true crime episode at the end of the month, but first we're gonna start with like some folklore about different tribes and stuff across Canada, learn more about them, uh,
Yes.
and different stories
Yeah.
and
That'll be
teachings
fun.
that they have. So, yeah, it should be
Yeah, that'll
really
be
interesting.
interesting. Yeah, I think so. Anyway,
Mhm.
we hope you all like, and sorry for the lack of social media, and also I've had trouble getting onto our direct messages online on Instagram too. So we're not ignoring you, but
Yeah.
I'm having some issues there. So we'll just have to see how it goes, and we'll just
Yeah.
catch you next week, and keep it cryptic.
Yeah, bye. This has been Castles and Cryptids. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Anchor, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and our YouTube channel. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit. On our website, you can listen to all of our episodes as well as view pictures for each of our segments. Check out our Patreon page to view all of our tiers and become a Patreon supporter today to unlock monthly bonus episodes and behind-the-scenes content. We are working on an Ask Us Anything. You can submit questions by social media or by email at castlesandcryptids@gmail.com. Do you have a spooky ghost story, a creepy cryptid sighting, or a thrilling true crime tale you would like to share and have us include in a future episode? Send us your listener story by social media or by email. Please include the name that you would like mentioned. Our music is by Kobe Fair. Our logo and artwork is by Antonio Garcia. Thanks for listening.